Fun episode of Carving Up Live on tap tonight. We've got a great one. Going to start with Daniel Jones, who's now replacing Anthony Richardson as the starting quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts. Is this the beginning of the end of AR and Indy? I'll talk about that to start the show. Also get to, again, more disturbing news with the Cincinnati Bengals. This defense is atrocious. Doesn't matter who the new coordinator is. Joe Burrow's going to have to carry this disaster ship of a franchise. Once again, talk about that. Carving up the context, my review of the Kingdom documentary. Remember, I talked to Anthony Salas of ESPN last week about the new Kansas City Chiefs documentary. Talk about that and really my main takeaways of it on Carving Up the Context. Bryson's best 10, my top 10 teams in college football as we go into a brand new 2025 season. Cannot wait for you to see my rankings there. And at the end of today's show, very impressed, and I'll explain exactly why I was impressed with Caleb Williams and the Chicago Bears offense in their preseason win over Buffalo. Great show on Carving Up Live. Drop the beat, baby. Here we go. And we're rolling, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening and welcome to Carving Up Live right here on YouTube as well as on X and Facebook. I am Bryson Carver. As always, it's our only show of the week, but it's a jam-packed one. You heard the open right there. We got mostly NFL, but a little sprinkle in, or it's more of a sprinkle. I mean, and college football is a major ingredient of this podcast, and hopefully will be moving forward. I'm trying to incorporate more college football into the show because, you know, I love college football a ton. I think this season is going to be unbelievable. Obviously, Vol View coming up on starting next Friday for the Tennessee Vols football season, but want to incorporate more college ball. My top 10 teams in the country. That's coming up in 45 minutes, carving up the context on the Kansas City Chiefs documentary, The Kingdom. Everybody, I appreciate everyone else stopping by. Feel free to chime in the comment section. Hit the subscribe button. Actually, a little bit, before we get into the action, a little bit of a brand new graphic, as you can see on the bottom if you're watching the show. If you're listening, I'll describe it. All my social media handles, really except for Facebook, but Facebook, it's carving it up. You can find it there. I don't really use Facebook except to stream the show. But I added my TikTok account down there, so that's Carving Up Podcast on TikTok, on X, then on Instagram right over here, and then the two YouTube channels that I stream the show from, Carving Up with Bryson Carver and the Grid Network. So everybody, feel free to subscribe, to follow, to share any of those accounts. We've got all kinds of content coming your way in the coming weeks, especially once football season gets here. It's just going to be a bonanza of content coming your way, so very excited about that. But first, some news out of Indianapolis. Haven't talked a lot of Colts this offseason. They're not one of the more fascinating teams in the National Football League, but they became that this week. Shane Steichen, the head coach of the team, this is his third year there as the head man in Indy. He announced that Daniel Jones, not Anthony Richardson, the fourth overall pick from 2023, but Daniel Jones will be the Indianapolis Colts starting quarterback this season. And Steichen even further went into detail saying, we hope this is a long-term thing for this season. We hope Daniel Jones is the Week 1 starter and the Week 18 starter, and we'll see maybe even beyond that if the Colts were to potentially make the playoffs. And so, listen, could it work? The Daniel Jones aspect of it is less fascinating than the Anthony Richardson part of it, so let's get that out of the way. Could it work? Well, sure it could. He's got a running game with Jonathan Taylor. Michael Pittman is one of the most talented receivers in the National Football League. The Colts are a solid offensive line. Defensively, they're atrocious, which is why I'm not a big Colts buyer. I'll get more into that in my predictions next week. I'm not really a big Colts buyer this season, particularly on the defensive side of the ball. But Steichen's a really smart offensive coach. You saw how he helped Jalen Hurts develop into an MVP candidate. Jalen has continued that from there, but he needed Shane Steichen to kind of get him on the tracks, mechanically speaking, in terms of his efficiency. Gardner Minshew almost made the playoffs in 2023 when Shane Steichen was the head coach, when Anthony Richardson got hurt, went down that year. So Shane Steichen can coach. I don't know if he's head coach material. Maybe he gets a second shot down the road. I love him as an OC more than I do as a head man. But the story is Anthony Richardson, and there's no question about it. So again, fourth overall pick out of Florida in 2023. Uber talented kid, wowed the Colts and wowed a lot of other teams at his pre-draft interviews. I remember talking about that in the show. The discussion was, hey, is it, because everyone knew that Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, like those were the top two QBs in that 23 class. Okay, between Richardson and between Will Levis, like who are the next two guys to go? listen, I wasn't really a believer in either, but I said, gun to my head, if you forced me to, I would take Anthony Richardson over Will Levis just from a character perspective, because Levis is just as erratic. He's more accurate, but just as erratic as Anthony Richardson and less mature. Like that, we saw that play itself out the last couple of years in Tennessee. And he was the quarterback of the worst team in football last year, the Titans. That's why Cam Ward is their new franchise quarterback. But what we've seen from Anthony Richardson, unfortunately, and this was my big concern coming out of college, has just been a continuation of his flaws back in college. That's despite having a good running game to back him up. That's despite having a solid wide receiving core and a really smart offensive play caller in Shane Steichen. We can show you these numbers and see if they look familiar to something else. So Anthony Richardson, it's kind of remarkable. He's only played 11 games in the NFL so far. I'm not saying the kid's career's over, but I am saying as the Colts franchise man, it's over. 11 touchdowns, 13 picks. He only throws for a little over 150 pass yards a game, barely completes 50% of his throws, which that wouldn't be good in the NFL 50 years ago. In today's NFL, it's abysmal. Passer rating in the 60s, that's awful, and in a record of 8-7. He's a game above 500. Do those look similar to his one full season starting at Florida? Yeah, they do. Touchdown interception ratio is obviously better. 17 touchdowns, 9 picks, but pass yards per game, virtually identical. Completion percentage, 53%, not great. 6-6 record. So we're talking about a kid who's uber talented, and the main sort of comparison for Anthony Richardson coming out of college was Josh Allen. I feel like there's an element of, and see if this makes sense. When Patrick Mahomes came out of Texas Tech, or at least when he came on the scene in the NFL, threw 50 touchdowns, won a Super Bowl by his second year as a starter, who was he compared to the most? Aaron Rodgers. We had seen Patrick was a little bit more mobile than Aaron, but they were kind of similar, like arm angles. Footwork wasn't amazing, but they can move in outside the pocket, make all the throws off their back leg. Like Aaron and Patrick have a lot of similarities. I would argue Aaron's game inspired Pat's game to a certain degree, that and Patrick playing baseball. And his dad playing baseball. So we had a comp for Patrick Mahomes. We had a comp for LeBron James. LeBron James was a more athletic Magic Johnson and a better scorer. Like both elite passers, both off the charts IQ, excellent rebounders. Again, LeBron a better scorer, shooter, the whole bit. LeBron is in the discussion for GOAT. Magic is, as of now, potentially the greatest point guard ever. But we had seen a LeBron James prototype before LeBron James. He was just a better version of it. I think Patrick Mahomes, a better version of Aaron Rodgers, but we had seen it before. We never saw anything like Steph Curry before, ever. I mean, I know Shaquille O'Neal and folks have talked about guys like Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf, who was an excellent shooter in his day and had to deal with really difficult circumstances, but we've never seen anybody like Steph Curry, who's almost better shooting off the dribble than off the catch, right? Like moving without the basketball, the ball handling, can score anywhere on the floor. We know Steph's the greatest shooter ever, but I feel like he's almost been minimized just to that, if that makes sense, because he can score anywhere on the floor, mid-range, get to the rim, greatest free throw shooter ever, the whole bit. And you've seen other teams like the Atlanta Hawks draft Trae Young, who's an uber talented player, who's 22 and 11 a night, but he's not Steph Curry. Well, he shoots deep. He's not Steph Curry. He can't score as efficiently as Steph can. Damian Lillard's garners some comparisons. Lillard is a lesser version of Steph at his peak, not Steph. I feel like that's what we're seeing in the NFL with Josh Allen. See, I think Mahomes is better than Josh Allen. I think the rankings having Josh above Patrick is absurd, especially given the fact that Josh is 0-4 in the playoffs against Patrick and has literally never outplayed him in a playoff game. Played him to a draw in 2021, but that's it. Is that he's so unique in terms of, okay, we've never seen a guy that big be able to run that fast and throw that accurately. See, the first you could say, well, Cam Newton kind of was. Cam Newton's a little bit bigger than Josh, or a little bit bulkier, so to speak, but Cam wasn't terribly accurate. He was a guy who kind of hovered in that 60% completion territory. Josh came in the league 52% completion. Now he's in kind of the mid-60s. He's no Joe Burrow, or he's certainly no like prime Drew Brees, but he's pretty darn accurate, all things considered, and he gives you what he gives you with his legs. The Colts drafted Anthony Richardson with the hopes that, okay, this can be our Josh Allen. This can be our guy to change the franchise and make us contenders again like we were with Peyton Manning back in the day. And the reality is there's some athletes that just aren't replicable, and there's some traits that quarterbacks have to have that once you get in the NFL, it it's hard to develop accuracy. It just is. Again, especially in the NFL. Like if you're struggling to complete 50% of your throws in college, I know it's the SEC and they produce the most NFL talent year in year out. I totally understand that. But there's also a degree of, receivers are far more open than college football than the NFL. And the NFL, the windows are that tight. Like when you hear some of the greats, the Tom Brady's of the world talk about like everything has to be absolutely on time, on target. That's why one of the reasons Brady's the GOAT is just his timing on these throws off the charts. Why would I expect Anthony Richardson to bring anything different? Again, there are guys who weren't necessarily natural throwers of the football. Lamar Jackson was not a natural thrower of the football. Dak Prescott was not a natural thrower of the football, but that's a mechanics thing that you can coach guys out of that. You can get guys out of those bad habits if you have the right staff around you. But just being dead on accurate with the football, by the time you get to the NFL, you kind of either have that or you don't. That's the reality for the Colts. That's why they were more successful with Gardner Minshew that first year when Anthony Richardson only played 4 games before going down. That's why you saw at points last year, Joe Flacco, who's the oldest player in the league, I think, or second oldest player, either him or Aaron Rodgers, well, the offense kind of has some success. I remember watching the game against my Steelers. The Colts were playing my Steelers early in the season, and when Joe Flacco's in the game, I'm kind of nervous. Even though it's a much lesser version of Joe, it's still pretty accurate. Got a good deep ball. Anthony Richardson is, in some ways, like a more athletic, this is going to sound brutal, but a more athletic Joe Milton. You're seeing, and listen, I'm a Vols fan, so Cowboys fans, don't say I didn't warn y'all about the all over the place-ness of Joe Milton. Anthony Richardson gives you more athletic ability as it pertains to scrambling out of the pocket, making plays with his legs. But accuracy-wise, he's actually worse than Milton in that front. But he's a little bit better. He's Tim Tebow with better mechanics. I mean, it's same number in college, ironically. I don't know why Florida hasn't retired 15, but that's another discussion for another day, is that certain things you can't teach, and accuracy is kind of one of them. And so if Anthony Richardson's mechanics were off, if it was like, Phillip Rivers didn't have those natural motions, so to speak, but you can kind of find a way to work around that. Lamar Jackson didn't. You can work on that. You can find a way with the right staff to be effective. Man, if you do not have an ability just to put the ball on time and on target, Joe Burrow can't move that well. Joe Burrow does not have the best arm in the league. Good God, he's accurate. I mean, just dead on the money. You can say Jamar Chase and T. Higgins all you want. We're going to talk about the Bengals in a few minutes. That guy is just money, absolute money. Does not miss passes. And so, that to me is the fascinating part of this. And it's unfortunate for Anthony Richardson because I think he's a good kid. Even as a Tennessee fan and him being a Florida guy, I wanted him to be successful in Indy. But, man, you've got to be on time and on target, and he's just not that. And, I mean, for him to get replaced by a guy in Daniel Jones, who famously got that 4-year, $160 million contract with the Giants coming off of a season in which he had 15 touchdowns and a passer rating of 92. I get he won the playoff game against Minnesota. He played well. That Vikings defense was atrocious. That was before they got Brian Flores. Kudos to him. There's been a lot of mediocre quarterbacks who've gotten one playoff win. But that's brutal. And especially, again, I think Steichen's a smart coach. I like the Colts personnel offensively. They'll have to play in a lot of shootouts because that defense is so bad. But man, if Daniel Jones has any level of success with all the failures in New York, if he has any level of success with Steichen, with his coaching staff, they're playing for their jobs here. Steichen's trying trying to keep the job beyond 2025. They're not going to replace Daniel Jones. If he has like a lesser version of the Sam Darnold year from last year with the Vikings, why replace him? We can move Anthony Richardson to somebody who wants to take a chance on the kid. Somebody will because he's so talented. And I'm not saying he can't have an NFL career. I am saying that this idea that that the Colts had that he could potentially be their Josh Allen, it's kind of like the NBA with Steph Curry. There's only one. You really can't get another version of Steph. You can maybe find a lesser version of LeBron because LeBron was a lesser version of a greater version of Magic. Mahomes was a greater version of Aaron Rodgers, or at least a similar, version of that player. They're not, you can't think of a historically great quarterback like Josh Allen. You really can't. Big, fast, and is reasonably accurate. So I saw that news. It was I'm bummed out for Anthony Richardson, but some of this is health. Some of this is his inability to stay on the field, and some of it is not very accurate with the football. And sometimes it comes down to that. So, and again, It's a minor announcement. We can go more into detail, as we go on the show. But we're doing the Carving It Up NFL Kickoff Show a little bit earlier this year. So normally I do it on Labor Day because everyone's got the day off, so generate a bigger audience. But just so we can have time to get the clips out there, so next Wednesday, I'm going to do my NFL 2025 Kickoff Show. We may or may not have a guest. We're trying to see if we can get that worked out. But I'll give my predictions, all 8 divisions, award winners, MVP, Coach of the Year, Rookie Year, all of it, and obviously playoff predictions and who wins Super Bowl 60 in San Francisco. Very excited to get to that next week. So stay tuned. That'll be at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time, and next Wednesday on Carving Up Live, our 2025 NFL Kickoff Show. Part of the reason I mentioned that is A, to promote it, and B, because I'm not going to spoil it. I'll be spoiling it, I guess, a little bit, but I just don't buy Indianapolis this year. I mean, just say it out loud. Bad defense in a quarterback room with Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson. Yeah. In the AFC, with all the great quarterback play there, not great. Not great if you're in Indianapolis, especially coming off the season you did a year ago. So that's where I'm at on the Colts. Speaking of an AFC team that, very well can make the playoffs. It wouldn't shock any of us. I may pick them to go to the playoffs. But they're not a championship contender. I'm talking about the Cincinnati Bengals. So they played a preseason game against the Washington Commanders, nationally televised, Monday Night Football. They won the game 31-17. Joe Burrow was pretty darn good. He was 9-14, 62 yards, touchdown, passer rating 97. I think Cincinnati playing him this early in the preseason, this early in the preseason, going in the regular season, they're sick of getting off to 0-2 or 1-3 starts. So let's get Joe into a rhythm. Joe's healthy. Let's go into the season with some momentum and not have to scratch and claw our way back the way we did a year ago when we were 4-8 and we had to win 5 straight and still miss the playoffs. So I'm amazed at those who think that this team is real this year. I really am. I've compared the Cincinnati team at the end of last year and throughout this offseason, them just doubling down off, we're just going to outscore people. Defense, what's that? Lou Anarumo, he was a defensive coordinator, helped get us to a Super Bowl in 2021 and gave Patrick Mahomes fits in back-to-back postseason, but he's the problem. It's not the fact that we've been cheap on that side of the ball, let multiple defensive players go. We still won't pay Trey Hendrickson. We may end up trading Trey Hendrickson. But hey, we paid T. Higgins, which again, as I said over and over, T. Higgins is gifted. He would be a starter, or not a starter, the number 1 receiver on probably half the league if you really broke it down. But you need Trey Hendrickson more. You need a guy to be able to get after the quarterback. Frankly, it'd be nice if you invested in that offensive line for once if you're Cincinnati. Did you watch that game against Washington Monday night? Joe Burrow is under duress constantly in this game. Zach Taylor, I don't know, haven't we all kind of had questions about what his effect is and his impact on winning is for Cincinnati? Like, he doesn't screw it up. I guess, if that's the greatest compliment I can give, is I've heard Eric Mangini, former NFL coach on national TV, talk about, he mostly refers to quarterbacks, but it applies to coaches too. Are you a force multiplier? Do you get the absolute most out of the talent that you have on your roster? And I don't really know if Zach Taylor does. It feels like it's a lot of Joe Burrow's amazing. So's Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, best receiving duo in the NFL. Running game, not great. Defense, atrocious. We play in the AFC North. Thank God the Browns are awful, and thank God for the Bengals' sake, the Steelers are incompetent on the offensive side of the ball. And again, they still very well may make the playoffs because if they get on the hot streak that they did at the end of last year, winning 5 straight, and they're not 4-8 prior to that, they very well could see in the playoffs. They might even win a playoff game. But this feels so much like the Drew Brees Saints circa 2012 to 2016. Like, Drew was throwing for 5,000 yards. Drew was putting up huge numbers. He was, make a case, he was probably the offensive player of the year discussion year in and year out. And you had Marcus Colston and Mark Ingram, and you had all these guys in a solid offensive line, and the defense was atrocious. And he had those 7-9 seasons. I don't think the Bengals are going to be, with 17 games, 7-10 or 8-9. I don't think that's going to be the case. Knock on wood if Burrow's healthy. But we bang on the Bengals defense, and rightfully so. They've been awful the last few years. And in this year, I think they're going to be bad as well. Tanner McKee of the Eagles torched him. Of course, Jaden Daniels ripped him to shreds multiple times or multiple drives in this game for Washington. But the offensive line for Cincinnati, like it's not a position they can get right. It's not a unit they can get right. Be it the draft, be it some reaches in the draft. They took the kid out of Georgia last year. It's some injury concerns. Be in free agency, that like they just have a tone deafness to protecting their most valuable asset, Joe Burrow, who, by the way, has injury history. So again, you pay Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase is the second best receiver in football to his old LSU teammate and Burrow's LSU teammate, Justin Jefferson, in my mind. Jamar Chase is a generational wide receiver talent. Has Hall of Fame potential. T. Higgins is excellent. But T. Higgins had the best year of his career last year, and so did Chase, and so did Burrow, and you lost, I think it was 5 games last year where you scored 20. I'd have to go back in my notes and look, but I think it was like 5, 6, 7 games in which you scored 27 or more. Like, what are we doing? What are we doing? Yeah, you're torching the great Ravens defense, but you can't stop Lamar Jackson. Now, few teams can, but it's not sustainable to have to score 35 a game in the NFL. Maybe in the Big 12 it is, or the old Big 12, but not in the National Football League. So this disregard of the defensive side of the ball, and maybe even more importantly, the offensive line. I mean, if you take Joe Burrow off the Cincinnati Bengals today, I know they have Chase and Higgins. The run game is atrocious. Zach Taylor is a mediocre coach at best. The defense is one of the 3 or 4 worst in football. Are they worse than Cleveland? Dead serious. Jake Browning is a solid backup. He's fine. He's won games in the NFL. Maybe they wouldn't be worse than Cleveland. Jake Browning can actually, he's fine. He stepped in for Burrow at times and played decent football. But it's just, you see situations like this all the time in sports, unfortunately, where you have this just God-gifted athlete and the organization just keeps screwing up. Because that's what their history is. The Brown family, Mike Brown and the Bengals ownership, the stadium, they don't spend a lot of money in free agency. They spend too much money on the wrong players. And it feels wrong to say spending money on T. Higgins is the wrong move per se, because he's a great and productive player coming off a career season. But not at the expense of addressing more important needs that could get you to the next level and get you back into contention. I mean, people forget they beat the Bengals defense was critical in them getting to the Super Bowl in 2021. Right? You think about that second playoff game against the Titans and Derrick Henry. Titans scored 16 points at home as the 1 seed. AFC Championship game against Kansas City. Yes, Joe Burrow was great in the second half, but that Bengals defense gave Mahomes fits. And the defensive coordinator, Lou Anarumo, who's with you for that, gone. Nowhere to be found. Fired him. So, listen. As a Steelers fan, listen, if this ends up coming to a situation, I've heard folks theorize that Joe Burrow could ask for a trade if this Bengals season goes haywire, and he would be, oh my gosh, can you imagine the trade market for that guy? The Bengals obviously wouldn't be foaming at the mouth to do it, but what could Cincinnati get for this guy if that were to come to pass? We're getting a little bit too ahead of ourselves. We got to see how the season plays out and see if Joe Burrow were even ask for that to begin with. But he's the type of guy, you can tell just by his demeanor. It's not a criticism. It's actually a praiseworthy compliment. He's a guy where he's not going to put up with incompetence for that long. He had a quote in 2022 when the Bengals won the division. He said, "We're contenders as long as I'm in my prime." I don't know. Yeah, prime there last year, and they weren't close to contenders. And I don't think they're close to contenders this year. Playoff team, maybe. Yeah. Could they win a playoff game if they get the right matchup? If they run to a team that they could just outscore? Sure. Whoever wins the AFC South? Yeah, maybe. But beyond that, no, they're not better than Buffalo. They're not better than Kansas City. They're not better than the team in their own division, Baltimore, who might have the second best roster in football to Philadelphia. So, yeah, I'm not a buyer at all as a contender, as a Super Bowl contender in the Cincinnati Bengals. Even if they get off to a hotter start this year than they have in years past, like they just do not believe in defense. It's unbelievable. Or the offensive line for that matter. It's, hey, Burrow, throw for 5,000 yards and 50 touchdowns and get in the MVP discussion, and we might win 10 games. It's not smart by Cincinnati. All right. Be back after the break in just 1 minute, but we come back carving up the cons. You heard me sort of mention the Kansas City Chiefs a little bit. I just finished this week the Kingdom, the new Kansas City Chiefs documentary. My man Anthony Salas, who was on the show on last Wednesday, was fantastic. Shout out to Anthony at ESPN. Talked about this new Chiefs doc. Carving Up the Context coming out. My main takeaways from this Chiefs documentary and kind of what I took from it. Tune in and stay tuned, rather, in just 1 minute. Carving Up Live. Carving Up the Context coming right up in just 1 minute. Welcome back to Carving Up Live. Appreciate everybody tuning in. Before we get to the Kansas City Chiefs documentary, my reaction to it for Carving Up the Context. Again, I just wanted to put this out there. A week from tonight, same time as our show usually is, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time on YouTube, on X, on Facebook. We may even try and get on Instagram, as many platforms as possible, obviously, but we will certainly be on YouTube and X, no question about that. The Carving It Up 2025 NFL kickoff show. I'll give all my predictions. Hold me to them, baby, for the 2025 season. Division predictions, award winners, MVP, Coach of the Year, Rookies of the Year, comeback player, all of it. And then most importantly, playoff predictions and who goes to Super Bowl 60 and who wins the big game in February in San Francisco. Very excited about that. Putting my predictions together right now. I cannot wait for you guys to see that. It's one of my favorite shows of the year. We try to get a guest on. We'll see if we can make that happen, but definitely tune in 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time, a week from tonight. The Carving Up 2025 NFL kickoff show. Cannot wait for that. Football's upon us, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, we got college football, a little bit of college football this weekend. Iowa State and Kansas State is kind of the big headliner, a top 25 matchup. My top 10 college football teams, that's coming up in 10 to 15 minutes, so definitely stay tuned for that. I'm going to try and get some more college ball involved on the show this season, so definitely stay tuned for more of that. But we do a segment every week. Certainly during football season. We don't do it as much in the offseason just because of scheduling, but during the football season, you can expect it. This time, a half hour into our Wednesday show, it's a segment I like to call Carving Up the Context. And if you're new to the show, essentially what that is obviously a play out the show, number one, but also taking a subject, taking a topic, and going a little bit deeper, bringing out the context regarding the subject that folks may have not caught, or maybe in this case, we're talking about a Chiefs documentary. Maybe you haven't watched it yet. I watched it for you. I watched all 6 episodes. You don't have to take my word for it. You can watch it for yourself, but kind of my reaction to it. So, as the head coach of the Colorado Buffaloes, primetime Deion Sanders says, give me my theme music. On this week's edition of Carving Up the Context, I wanted to talk about The Kingdom, the Chiefs documentary that just came out last week on ESPN Plus and Disney Plus. We can go ahead and show you the graphic for it. My friend Anthony Salas joined us. He works for ESPN, works for ESPN Films on this docuseries, The Kingdom, which again is on Disney Plus, ESPN Plus. Please check it out. Anthony was fantastic. That segment is on the YouTube channel now, so feel free to check it out whenever. Listen, basically all the things. Obviously, shocker, he worked on the doc, but basically all the things that he previewed and was kind of teasing, they all pretty much happened in the docuseries, which covered the Chiefs' 2024 season and their push for a historic three-peat. So, main takeaways, number one is, not that we didn't already know this, but it reminded me so much of The Last Dance and also of my Golden State Warriors. There's not a Warriors doc yet. Oh, I can't wait till there is someday, but it's so hard to be a dynasty. Like it is. Like just the finding ways to motivate yourself to just go after it season after season, game after game. It's why, frankly, and we'll talk about this throughout the segment, it's why you saw last year the Chiefs struggling with the Panthers, They're barely getting out against teams like Cleveland. And like, what's going on? Like, they went 15-2, but they're barely surviving some of these games. But they're also beating some of the best teams in the NFL. They beat the Broncos on a block kick, and they beat Tampa Bay and Baltimore. I mean, you can just go down the list. Like Cincinnati, that loss in Cincinnati is part of the reason the Bengals didn't make the playoffs, or the win against Cincinnati, rather. And so, but like, you just see this starting with, you can see kind of the tipping point in the doc. The loss to Buffalo, Josh Allen has the big fourth down run. The Bills beat the Chiefs, handing the first loss of the season last year. And then they turn around, and it takes a game-winning Patrick Mahomes drive to beat the Carolina Panthers. And there's a moment where, the Chiefs players are actually kind of down. Like, they won the game, and they're down. And Andy Reid's like, hey, guys, have your head up. It's hard to win in this league. And Mahomes at one point interjects, and he's like, hey, cut the cameras. And so all you have from that point is audio. The cameras are like outside of the locker room, the ESPN cameras. And he's basically saying like, hey guys, we got to be better than this. If we're trying to do something no one's ever done before, we got to be better. And so it does go to my point of what I said all of last year. It's not this, the Chiefs are lucky. No, I think the Chiefs were physically and mentally exhausted. And as my man Anthony pointed out, they were also injured. They had to bring in Kareem Hunt after Isaiah Pacheco went down. They had to make the move for DeAndre Hopkins after they lost Hollywood Brown and Rashee Rice. Rashee Rice, at some point, we assume is going to get suspended at this point, at some point this coming season. So it's the battling the injuries. It's battling the mental sort of just grind of trying to sustain what no team has ever done before. No team has ever in the history of the league. The Chiefs are the first team to do it. Win back-to-back Super Bowls and then go to another one. There have been, I think it was 7 teams, if I'm not mistaken, 7 teams in NFL history that had tried to three-peat. Came up short, did not even get to the Super Bowl. The closest ever was, I think it was the 1990 49ers lost the NFC Championship game to the New York Giants at home and spoiled their three-peat chances. I think there was a fumble late in the game. Like, that's the closest we had seen. And then Kansas City did come closer before Philadelphia waxed them in the Super Bowl in New Orleans. So it's hard to be a dynasty. That's number one. Number two, this kind of caught me off guard a little bit. I will have to admit. And I gained a greater appreciation for this player after watching it. We think of Travis Kelce. He's earned a reputation over the course of his, 12-year career, going to year 13 now, as obviously an all-time great tight end. If you look at his playoff numbers, he's one of the greatest pass catchers in the history of the league. But fun-loving, kind of crazy. Like, if you had to pick a Chief that would date Taylor Swift, which, that didn't seem like a question that would be asked 2 years ago, but it'd probably be Travis Kelce. Like, he's the type of guy that he's fun-loving. He's the crazy tight end. Patriots had a guy like that, obviously, in Gronk. Like, there's some parallels there. I was really impressed watching the doc with Travis Kelce's leadership. Chris Jones is the emotional leader of the emotional heart and soul, obviously the best player too, of the Chiefs defense. We know what Patrick Mahomes means from a leadership perspective to the offense. Travis Kelce's interaction with the young guys, with the Xavier Worthies of the world, with the Trent McDuffies, even on the defensive side of the ball, like just the ability, and some of it's just because Travis is in some ways kind of like a big kid, just his ability to connect and relate, and it's all right. Some of it is Travis is playing a lot of Super Bowls. He's playing a lot of AFC championship games. It's new for some of these guys. Breather, let's have some fun. Let's go play our best ball. And you just see this, certainly see a maturity from Travis, which you would expect to see for someone who's played over a decade in the league. But I came away from this doc thinking, okay, Mahomes and Chris Jones are the Chiefs' 2 main leaders, but we knew that. Travis Kelce's we think of him as like part of the big 3, Mahomes, Chris Jones, Travis Kelce. But I feel like, okay, he's one of the 3 leaders in this team, and it shows. Like, they play loose, they play comfortable, they play calm. A lot of that's Mahomes, but some of that's Travis Kelce and his ability to relate to the younger guys. So I was quite impressed by Travis watching that. Something else, and this sort of goes back to my first point about how hard it is to be a dynasty, is you look at Mahomes, you look at and some of this was covered in the Netflix series Quarterback, which I haven't seen season 2 yet. Season 1 was amazing. Is just and this is all the great athletes have this. It's just they're never freaking satisfied. It's Tom Brady had one of the greatest quotes of all time. Tom, what's your favorite Super Bowl ring? The next one. I feel like Mahomes has a very similar mentality. Like, yes, there's the mindset of, hey, can I catch Brady? Could I get 7 rings? Look what Patrick Mahomes, can we show you the numbers, what he's done in his career? The man hasn't even turned 30 yet. He's already first all time in win percentage, pass rating, and completion percentage of the playoffs. And he's second all time in total yards per game. TD to interception ratio, wins. He's second all time in wins in the playoffs to Brady. He's not even 30 years old yet. Second in total touchdowns, second game winning drives, second and fourth quarter comebacks, tied for second in MVPs and Super Bowl appearances, and tied for fourth in Super Bowl wins. And you still see just the same back at it mindset. He seems just as motivated as the guys who never won before. He seems just as motivated as the Allens and the Burrows and the Lamars and the Jalen Hurtses of the world. Like, that's what separates the all-time great athletes. That's why LeBron James is in year 23 working just as hard as the young guys are. Why Steph Curry's going into year 17. I mean, you see him with the weighted vest running up the hills. Like, that's what separates the all-time greats, is the ones that are all-time great gifted and work their butt off. And that's what Patrick Mahomes has. And so, like, I love seeing that. Fourth takeaway, and I got to admit, I'm still dumbfounded by this. I know I'm on an island with this. I don't care. I have to see results at some point. I'm amazed at how the documentary covered the Kansas City Chiefs, and I say this with the biggest air quotes ever, rivalry with the Buffalo Bills. Okay. What's funny is Buffalo's beaten the Chiefs 4 games in a row in the regular season going back to 2021. Josh Allen, I think in his career is like 4-1, 4-2, 4-1, I think, against the Chiefs in the regular season, 0-4 in the playoffs. Folks, I've said this multiple times on my show. I feel like I'm the only one that says this. And you just heard me praise Josh Allen to start the show. I think he's the second best QB in football. But no quarterback in the history of the league, has ever been 0-4 against another quarterback in the postseason. Josh Allen is against Patrick Mahomes. And we've done segments on the show before. Patrick's out. In 3 of the 4 games, Patrick is objectively outplayed Josh. In the all-time classic, the 13-second game, obviously cannot blame Josh for that. He was amazing in that game. We'll say it was a draw. Mahomes got the ball last. If Josh Allen got the ball last, Bills probably won the game. That game very well could have been decided by a coin toss, to be honest, because both quarterbacks were just on fire in that all-time great playoff matchup. But he played Mahomes to a draw because Mahomes himself was spectacular in that game. Every other game, Mahomes has outplayed Josh. In terms of touchdowns, not turning the ball over, efficiency, yards, the whole bit, passer rating. And so I've compared the Chiefs and Bills rivalry. And I don't view Josh Allen in the vein that I view his comparison superstar at cross sport. And I'll explain why. I've compared the Chiefs and Bills rivalry to the Warriors-Rockets rivalry. Steph Curry and the Warriors have played the Houston Rockets 5 times, 4 times with James Harden as the best player, and they beat him every single time without fail. In a rivalry, it's got to be a tug of war. It's got to be a little bit of a push and pull. Somebody's got to get the advantage at some point. Lakers Celtics in the 80s is not a rival. I mean, think about it this way. Look at NBA history. Do we consider Celtics Lakers in the 60s a rivalry? No. No, matter of fact, the Celtics beat the Lakers 8 straight times in the finals before the Lakers finally got over the hump and beat Boston in 1985. That was not a rivalry until the Lakers finally broke through. Warriors-Cavs is a rivalry because the Cavs got one. Could have got one in 2015. Like, there's got to be a little bit of resistance from the other side, and there hasn't been from Buffalo. The games have been entertaining. Josh has been great in almost all of them. The back-to-back years, he's had the ball in his hands twice, down 3, chance to go tie or win the game. Came up short both times. This year, he got 17 yards. And I love Josh. I have Josh a slightly over Burrow and Lamar. But we have to be honest about this stuff. So I thought the way the doc, and nothing against the doc or even against folks that were interviewed for it, this is not a rivalry until Buffalo, gets Kansas City in the postseason. It's not. Warriors-Rockets was not a rivalry. That's the comparison here. So that's another takeaway. Sorry I got so heated over that. It's just like, gosh, eventually Buffalo's got to get one over the Chiefs. And then the fifth takeaway, and the great Peter King, one of the best NFL writers of all time, Sports Illustrated back in the day. Peter King had a great line in the stock, and he was featured prominently as one of the folks who were interviewed. And everyone, who was interviewed did a fantastic job. I thought Peter King had, and I'm paraphrasing here, but he had the line of the doc in my mind, because they had a whole, and Anthony talked about this on the show last week, how he had pulled a lot of audio and video of Chiefs hate, so to speak. Everyone hates the Chiefs. And to paraphrase Peter King on that documentary, when you're hated, you've officially made it. You have not made it as a true dynasty if people at some point do not hate your guts. People now, I don't romanticize is the wrong way to put it because his career accomplishments are insane. But I think generally Tom Brady has a pretty high approval rating among the average NFL fan. Outside of like outside of like Jets, Bills, and Dolphins fans who we tortured twice a year. Outside of that, I think everyone kind of loves Tom. They do. Whereas back when he played, I mean, there's a great moment in the 2021 Hall of Fame speech. Peyton Manning's giving his Hall of Fame speech. He mentions Tom Brady. This is just a few years ago now. He mentions Tom Brady's name. I mean, rain of boos in Canton, Ohio. And Brady's like, man, come on, dude. I don't think that would happen with Tom now. It would absolutely happen with Patrick because Patrick's the reigning dynasty. At some point, Patrick's going to get love. There was this notion, an absurd one. Oh, the league is fixing games for the Patriots. Oh, the Jesse James play with the Steelers. Bad call, but they didn't fix it for the Patriots. Go up and down the list. The offsides against Kansas City that saved New England a potential loss in the AFC title game against the Chiefs. Like all of these things. Oh, the league, the refs got it in the bag for the Chiefs. Funny, they forgot to do that in the Super Bowl. NFL had a chance to have history on that field in New Orleans. The first three-peat champion ever in the history of the NFL. And Philadelphia said, that's cute. 40-22 happened. 40-7 at one point. So it's just a... And again, like there's the Taylor Swift stuff, which I talked about last week in the show. That evidently got a lot of play on Instagram and TikTok. So shout out to the Swifties. I appreciate y'all. But the thing that sort of is, something that they talked about in the doc when they talked a lot about Taylor Swift in episode 3 of the doc and how the relationship with Travis happened and everything. And something that one of the Chiefs, I think it was one of the PR directors said, she was talking about this. She said, before Taylor Swift dated Travis Kelce, the Chiefs fans, the divide between men and women was 50-50. Now it's 57-43. Which has to be the biggest margin in the National Football League. And they went through a show for 2 years now, but they went through a whole montage of dads and their girls watching football, and their girls are learning what a first down is and about the players and whatnot. And it's like that part is awesome to me. Like the more the merrier. Let's get more people under this tent at the block party, so to speak, of the NFL, which is obviously the most popular league in the United States of America. And so I thought they covered that well. But the Taylor Swift hate has always been nonsensical. We know this, but the Chiefs hate in general, it stems back to one simple thing. It's really simple. They win a lot. The Golden State Warriors were at their most hated when they were at their most dominant. The New England Patriots were at their most hated when they were at their most dominant. For some reason, there's this weird thing with the Bulls where, listen, I wasn't around in the 90s. Maybe it wasn't the case, but I think generally the Bulls were kind of beloved. That's the only difference. Everyone hated the Shaq and Kobe Lakers, unless you were a Lakers fan. You hated the Warriors. You hated, even though they were in a dynasty, you hated the Miami Heat when they went to 4 straight finals with Bron, Wade, and Bosh. People don't like that. People hated Alabama. Now, people don't like Alabama, but it's not the way it was. So people hated Duke basketball. Like, if you're dominant, people do not like you. I don't get it, but matter of fact, I guess I do get it from the standpoint of, hey, there's a villain. As I've said it many times in the show, Star Wars is terrible without Darth Vader. Dark Knight is a good movie, but it's not what it was with the Joker. So there you go. What do we got? My man Alfred Parso Jr., Metropolitan Report, subscribe to his show. Big-time Mets fan, covers the Mets multiple times a week. Subscribe to his show. Love Alfred. He said he's going back to his nickname he gave me a couple weeks ago. It's the Carve Master. I appreciate that, Alfred. He says, Hard Knocks over the Kingdom. I got to admit to you, listen, the Hard Knocks, oh my gosh, who's the narrator of Hard Knocks? I'm forgetting his name now. Oh my gosh, it's going to drive me crazy. I forget. It's not John Hamm. It's someone. I forget who the narrator of Hard Knocks is. Anyways, and then the theme music. I gotta admit, Hard Knocks doesn't give quite the access. And part of it is because in the age of the cell phone, you've got more access than ever. But Hard Knocks doesn't quite give you the insight that they used to. Like if you look back at this, might have been the first Hard Knocks covering the Ravens with Ray Lewis and Shannon Sharp. Like hysterical. All-time television. Liev Schreiber. Yes, Liev Schreiber does a great job. Great narrator. It's not quite what it used to be, is kind of my take. Let's see. He said, I think Hard Knocks every year, hands down, is the best docuseries going. That's fair. Listen, there's a reason they keep renewing it. He says Mahomes has had better teams than Josh. That's what it is. Yeah, maybe. If you look at some of Josh's weapons back in the days, they definitely exceeded Patrick's, particularly in 2023, or 2022 rather, and 2023 actually. Mahomes never deflated balls or stole signs from a private practice. Listen, the stole signs, and Alfred's a Jets fan, so I completely understand why he's irritated about that. That was more a product of Belichick, and the deflated balls thing, I've talked about that ad nauseum on my show, is the single biggest sham scandal in the history of the National Football League. There's a great book. I highly recommend it from, oh my gosh, a Pro Football Talk. I'm forgetting his name now. Crap. Anyways, Pro Football Talk. It's called is it Game Changers? I'm forgetting the name of the book now. This completely discredits the argument. But I think it's Game Changers. Matter of fact, let me look it up while we're on the show. Let me look it up right now because I want to be able to give the credit that it deserves on the show. Hang on. Mike Florio of Pro Football Talk wrote a great book. If I can pull this up here and see which it is, because I read it a few years ago. It is called Playmakers. That's what it was, not Game Changers, Playmakers. And it talks about kind of the ins and outs of the NFL, and it's a really good book. And there's one chapter dedicated to Deflategate that is just so darn good in the sense that the following season after Deflategate, because I'm of the mindset like most, because the Patriots really needed deflated balls to beat the Colts 45-7. But the NFL tested their footballs the following season when games featured similar weather conditions to that AFC Championship game. Every single game, the balls were deflated, just like the Patriots were. And the NFL covered that up to not make them look bad. And Mike Florio, to his credit, exposed that. And so, again, Spygate is a real scandal. Deflategate is not. Deflategate is nonsense. What do we got? I don't like that Taylor Swift is appointed as the doc. I mean, she's the most famous woman in the world, like in dating the second most popular. Well, I guess at this point, might be the most popular player on the team because of her. But prior to her, the second most popular player on the team. And she was only a point of emphasis for like 20, 25 minutes in the doc. But yeah, to your point, Taylor Swift's brought so many casual fans. All these little girls and women will stop watching once she breaks up with Travis, if that ever happens. Maybe, but I also think football has this funny thing of just tying you in forever. It's a really addictive game. It's kind of similar to golf in some sense. And I don't think that'll be the case, Alfred. I really don't. Now, it won't be as high. I agree. It won't be as high because there are some folks that genuinely just tune in for Taylor, but there are some folks who are like, I actually talked to a guy from Scotland on social media who's a big Swiftie. And he was like, this NFL stuff's kind of awesome. Again, get as many people on a tent as you can. Let's see. Oh, there you go. Metropolitan Report. Ironic you're talking Bills, Chiefs, and the Kingdom and Hard Knocks is in Buffalo this year. Again, it's not a knock on the Bills. I'm not as big of a fan of Hard Knocks as most, only because I don't think it's quite the show that it used to be. They don't give you quite the insight that they used to. Again, some of that is because you have cameras everywhere now, and some of that is, teams don't want, especially the New York Giants, they learned this lesson. The less cameras in your organization, usually the better. I mean, the Giants got exposed forever because of the in-season Hard Knocks or off-season Hard Knocks when they moved on from Saquon Barkley, which, oof. So there you go. All right. We got a fun segment on tap. Very excited about this. My top 10 teams in college football. So to preface this, so college football starts unofficially, I guess you could say, this weekend, the official week 1 kickoff, which the week 1 college games are just... I mean, come on. You got, obviously, Ohio State and Texas is the big game, but you got LSU and Clemson. You got Miami and Notre Dame. I mean, the week 1 schedule. You got Bill Belichick's debut on, I think that's a Monday night Labor Day game. South Carolina plays Virginia Tech. Like, again, some out-of-conference stuff. My Vols play Syracuse. The week 1 schedule, even Bama, Florida State is kind of interesting. Bama's going to win, but it's kind of interesting. It's Florida State. God bless the schedule makers in college football, and God bless them for putting into the 12-team playoff, because now, officially, you can have games like this where one loss does not doom your season. Real quick before I get to, I see him, Alfred says, Boomer. I did not know Alfred I did not know you're an Oklahoma fan. Okay. I did not know Alfred was an Oklahoma fan. That's cool. Boomer Sooner. Okay, so, and Oklahoma's going to have a really good team this year. I really, really like Mateer, the new quarterback transfer from Washington State. I think Oklahoma's going to be really good this year. But I'll give my top 10 teams in college football. So let's get back to this, baby. Here we go. Are we ready to roll? All right, so we will start at number 10, the 10th best team in college football coming into the 2025 season out of the SEC. It is South Carolina. The Gamecocks are the 10th best team in college football, and here's why. Much of this boils down to Lenora Sellers, who I think is worst case the second best quarterback in the country this year to Cade Klubnik at Clemson. Listen, Lenora Sellers, from a size perspective, arm strength, mobility, unbelievable talent. I love him. If he improves from last season, love him as a prospect going into the 2026 draft, which obviously has a much stronger QB class than the one we just had. But Lenore Sellers is excellent. Again, they've got a really good defense, got a great edge rusher in Dylan Stewart. They did lose a lot of defensive starters, particularly in their front seven to the draft. Kyle Kennard, who's a friend of the Grid Network, was drafted out of South Carolina. They lost a lot of defensive starters, but they won 9 games last year, could have easily won 11. The only issue with South Carolina, and I think the reason some are a little hesitant to crown the Gamecocks this year, back half of their schedule is brutal. I mean, it is brutal. It's LSU, it's Bama, it's Clemson. It's tough stuff down the stretch for the Gamecocks, but I'm a Lenore Sellers believer, full, absolute, without question. I think Shane Beamer's done a really, really good job recruiting and using the transfer portal. The Gamecocks are the 10th best team in college football going into the season. We're staying in the SEC at number 9. It is the Alabama Crimson Tide. Alabama is the 9th best team in college football, and here's why. A lot of this for me boils down to Kalen DeBoer. I am a Kalen DeBoer fan, have been since he was at Washington. I remember when Nick Saban retired as a Vols fan, I was jumping for joy. Thank God the greatest coach ever is out of, Kalen DeBoer is now the head coach at Alabama. And again, year one did not go as Bama fans had hoped. They won 9 games. They failed to win 10 games for the first time in almost like 15. I think it was since like 2007 was the last time they didn't win 10 games. Losing that bowl game to a Michigan team that barely could complete a forward pass. Like, what is going on? Ty Simpson, I think, as a pure passer, is an upgrade from Jalen Milroe, who I was never a huge fan of as an NFL talent. Ryan Williams is an unbelievable talent. If not for Jeremiah Smith, Ryan Williams is the best young wide receiver prospect in the country. But Bama's defense is really good. I think the O-line is really, really talented. Kalen DeBoer has a history. Again, by the way, he has Ryan Grubb. Yes, Ryan Grubb back as his offensive coordinator, which he had for years at multiple other stops, particularly in Washington. So that continuity is going to work for the Tide. I think, generally speaking, that's a coach you don't bet against. It's certainly a program you don't bet against. I know as a Vols fan, Alabama is at number 9. Yes, we're staying. I promise we're going to get to other conferences, but we're staying in the SEC. At number 8, it is LSU. The Tigers are the 8th best team in college football, and here's why. Folks, it's time for Brian Kelly to win now. This is year 4 now. His replacement, Marcus Freeman, has kind of been doing really good at Notre Dame. Got into a national title game. And I was a defender of Brian Kelly in the sense that, hey, the whole point of him going to LSU is now he'll get more NFL players, future NFL players, better recruits on his roster. Well, he's had that. They got to the SEC title game in 2022, to their credit, but have kind of gone backwards the last couple of years. Had a 3-game losing streak at the end of last season that knocked him out of college football playoff contention. I really like Garrett Nussmeier, their quarterback. Good experience, has been through the fire of SEC competition, one of the top quarterbacks in the conference. They had the number 1 transfer portal class. So Brian Kelly understands the sense of urgency. LSU's going to be really good this year. I'm a believer. I think they're probably, I'll give my official predictions next Friday, but I think LSU's probably a college football playoff team. They are my 8th best team in the sport. At number 7, it's actually the team I had winning the national championship last year, and boy, did I feel good about it until it got burned in the Rose Bowl. Number 7 out of the Big Ten, it is Oregon. The Oregon Ducks are the 7th best team in college football, and here's why. Listen, Dan Lanning is an unbelievable coach. We obviously came from Georgia. I don't want to say turned around this Oregon program, but he kind of turned around this Oregon program, one that has never won a national championship. They lost a lot of players in the draft a year ago. Most notably, obviously, Dylan Gabriel, who's their starting quarterback to the Cleveland Browns. But they've got another good young quarterback coming, kid out of UCLA by the name of Dante Moore, who is the top quarterback in his class. Didn't really work out at UCLA. It wasn't a very good football team. Now he's with Dan Lanning. Dan Lanning made Bo Nix work. Bo Nix was balling in the NFL. Made Dylan Gabriel work despite physical limitations. I think Dante Moore is going to have a really good year for Oregon. They've got some injuries at wide receiver, which concern me, but Oregon's too darn talented. Dan Lanning's too good of a head coach. Oregon is the 7th best team in college football in 2025. At number 6 is the national champion runner-ups. It is Notre Dame. The Fighting Irish are the 6th best team in college football, and here is why. It's kind of ready, set for Notre Dame to make another run this year. So again, they don't play in a conference, but Marcus Freeman is one of the top coaches in college football. I just talked about that when talking about Brian Kelly, the former Notre Dame coach at LSU. But the kind of a little bit of a surprising run to the national championship last year. I don't think, not to poo-poo on Notre Dame last year, but I think there were other teams we figured would be in that spot, like Penn State, who Notre Dame beat in the Orange Bowl to get to the national title game. Some other teams out there. They've got this new kid, CJ Carr. CJ Carr is his name, the new quarterback at Notre Dame. He's actually the grandson of Lloyd Carr, who was the legendary coach at Michigan, won the 97 national championship game with the Wolverines. But Jeremiah Love, one of the top running backs in college football, had the big run, big run against Indiana in the playoff game. Notre Dame, think about this. As the top 25 currently stands, Notre Dame has 3 tough games right out of the bat in their first 5. They got to go to Miami, they play Texas A&M, and they play Boise State, who's ranked. After October 4th, Notre Dame does not play a single currently ranked team the rest of the season. So split with Miami and Texas A&M, beat Boise State at home, which you should. You're in the playoff. Like, it's guaranteed. It's 11-1, worst case scenario, and the Fighting Irish should be in. I'm a believer in Marcus Freeman. He's done an unbelievable job with this program, actually elevating it from where Brian Kelly took it. The Fighting Irish, Notre Dame, is the 6th best team in college football. Into the top 5 out of the SEC, it is Georgia. The Georgia Bulldogs are the 5th best team in college football, and here's why. So the biggest weakness on this Dogs team a year ago, and it was no question about it, was wide receiver. Well, Kirby Smart and Georgia said, let's add to this receiving core in the transfer portal, okay? You added Noah Thomas from Texas A&M, Zachariah Branch from USC, so they were able to really shore up that wide receiving core, which was bad a year ago. I do have questions about Gunnar Stockton at quarterback. I wasn't particularly impressed when he came in relief for Carson Beck in the SEC championship game, and certainly in that loss in the playoff to Notre Dame in the Sugar Bowl. But listen, a very strong argument can be made that Kirby Smart's the best coach in college football. He's done an unbelievable job winning 2 national championships at Georgia, multiple SEC titles. They're actually the defending SEC champion. For the last decade, they've been one of the most functional programs or one of the most successful programs in the sport. Listen, I know sometimes if there was a loss of quarterback, Carson Beck going to Miami, and by the way, Miami's not on this list. I am not a buyer at all in the Hurricanes. But regardless, sometimes if there's a loss of quarterback and some loss of talent the last few years in the draft, it's like, okay, they'll be good, but don't ever count out Georgia. Don't ever count out Kirby Smart. By the way, they only play 3 true road games this year. Big advantage for the Dogs. Georgia is the 5th best team in college football in 2025. At number 4, it's a guy I've been critical of, a program I've been critical of, but I kind of like him coming into this year. At number 4 out of the ACC, it is Clemson. The Tigers are the 4th best team in college football. Here's why. I think Cade Klubnik's the best quarterback in college football this season. Again, it's between him and Lenore Sellers. I love both going into next year's NFL draft. The way that kid has developed over the last few years has been really, really impressive. And by the way, if you look at what Clemson's done this year and the talent they bring back, 16 starters from a year ago that the Tigers bring back. They won the ACC kind of against all odds last year. They lost to Texas in that first round playoff game in Austin, but the fact that they made it as close as they did is a credit to Dabo Swinney, who I've always acknowledged is a great coach. I still double down. I do not believe in his philosophy of not using the transfer portal. With that being said, it's a talented roster. They have the best quarterback in the country. And it's not like the ACC is exactly murderer's row. Yeah, there's folks that believe in Miami. I understand that. And maybe someone else. SMU emerged last season. Maybe some other team will. But Clemson has been the standard of the ACC for the last decade plus. Klubnik's an amazing quarterback. I think they're a shoo-in to make the college football playoff. Clemson is at number 4. The next 3 teams, you can make a case really for any of them at number 1. At number 3, folks may think I have them a touch low, but out of the Big Ten, it is the Penn State Nittany Lions. Penn State, the 3rd best team in college football. Here's why. Listen, Drew Aller has shown real promise as one of the top quarterbacks in the country the last couple of years. Nick Singleton is a monster at running back. And obviously defensively, we know what Penn State's identity has been on that side of the ball. The big question is James Franklin, who I love and respect as a man and as a head coach. But he's 4-20 in his career against top 10 teams in his career. Again, even if there were those, the James Franklin haters or skeptics or whatever you want to call them, there were those who looked at Penn State last year, despite getting to the college football playoff semifinal and losing to Notre Dame, and saying, yeah, but who'd they beat to get there? They beat SMU, who was probably the worst team in the playoff, at home. And then the second round, they beat, yes, Ashton Jeanty was awesome last year, but was Boise State one of the 12 best teams? They deserve to be there, don't get me wrong. But were they one of the 12 best teams in the playoff? Not even close. That was the only advantage that Boise State had in that game, was that running back, and Penn State's still pretty good at that position. And then they go to Miami to play Notre Dame. They end up losing a close one against the Irish. So again, a lot of this is going to come down to, okay, can you beat the big boys? Can you beat the Oregons of the world? Can you beat Ohio State at Ohio State? That's the thing. That game is at the Horseshoe this year. So that's going to be a really big question for Penn State this year. But I really like their roster. Their defense is stacked. Offensively, we know what they like to do in terms of their identity. The Nittany Lions are the third best team in college football. Their counterparts in the Big Ten and the defending national champions are at number 2, the second best team in college football, the defending champs, Ohio State. The Buckeyes are the second best team in the country, and here is why. So I would make a case. They have the best player in college football in Jeremiah Smith. He is the most physically gifted wide receiver I've ever seen in my life in college. Like, again, in the last decade, you can think about the LSU duo, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson. Jefferson, I think, is the best receiver in football, actually followed by Chase. This kid is just, I mean, it's like Julio Jones meets Megatron. It's unreal stuff. Amazing hands. Great route runner. He's got the size advantage. The kid is off the charts. You got the kid, Jalen Sand, who's the new quarterback. They just named him the starter for Ohio State. Listen, Ryan Day got the monkey off his back. Ryan Day was, can't win the big one, can't beat Michigan. We'll see if they can beat Michigan this year. They're going to need to get a W over the Wolverines at Ann Arbor. But the run they went on last year, beat Tennessee, beat Oregon, beat Texas, and then beat Notre Dame to win the national title, was the most impressive run to a national championship we've ever seen. It's a new playoff, seeding format, but still very impressive on the part of Ohio State. There seems to be a little bit of a we understand the team they're playing, and obviously who the number 1 team in the country is in my mind. The team they're playing in week 1, they're the story, but don't forget that's the defending national champions. That they're replacing 2 coordinators. I get that, but that's a blue bar program. They're going to get it not back on track. They're going to continue to be successful. Very well could win the Big Ten. The Buckeyes are the second best team in the country. And that leaves number 1, I'm sure you'd guessed by now, out of the SEC, Texas. The Longhorns are the best team in college football coming into 2025, and here is why. I mentioned Kirby Smart. In my mind, is probably the best coach in the country. I'd probably put Sark at number 2, Steve Sarkisian. The job he's done coming into Texas, turning this program around, has been off the charts. Listen, the story's Arch Manning. He's trying to continue the lineage of the greatest football family dynasty ever, the Mannings. Listen, if the kid goes out there at the Horseshoe, balls out at Ohio State, throws 3 touchdowns, 300 yards, he's a shoo-in to be the first pick in next year's draft. He's an unbelievable talent. Mobility-wise, he can move, good arm strength, the whole bit. And playing in that offense with Sark is going to be incredibly beneficial. But Colin Simmons on defensively, guys like Michael Taft, Anthony Hill, and then Wingo at wide receiver, C.J. Baxter at running back. Like, listen, we talk about Arch Manning, and rightfully so, but the talent up and down this roster, Texas has a chance to be the best defense in the country. There's really not much not to like about this team. Again, I'll make my official predictions next week, but as of right now, I think Texas should be the favorite to win the national championship. And boy, oh boy, we get Texas, Ohio State in week 1. Come on. Doesn't get better than that. What do we got? Alfred, God rest his soul. I miss Coach Barry Switzer. Barry Switzer died? I think Barry Switzer's still alive, Alfred. I could be tripping. I'm pretty sure he's alive. Barry, I know he's getting up there in age. Yeah, he's 87 years old. You scared me for a little bit there, Alfred. You said God rest his soul. I was like, did I miss something during the segment? You put Lenore Sellers over Arch Manning. Only thing is I've seen more from Lenore Sellers. Now, could be after the first game. It's like, oh yeah, Arch is the best quarterback. He's better than Klubnik. He's better than Sellers. He's better than Drew Aller. But I just think from a physical perspective, the arm strength, the mobility, that win over Clemson at the end of the regular season, the way he played against Alabama, almost beat the Tide. Like, the kid is really, really gifted. I'm not saying South Carolina is a title threat per se, but definitely a real player to give someone trouble. And who knows, maybe they may not even get to Atlanta. It would not now the schedule. Let me go to South Carolina's schedule second half of the season, because it is just murderer's row. South Carolina schedule. Okay. So from October 11th on, this is their schedule. At LSU, home for Oklahoma, home for Alabama, at Ole Miss. They get a week off, and they go to College Station against Texas A&M. Home game for Coastal Carolina, or I think is that Coastal Carolina? Yeah, I think so. Regardless, and then a home game against Clemson. Thank God the Clemson game's at home, because they beat Clemson in Death Valley last year, but that is going to be a massive, massive game for South Carolina. And he says Klubnik is pretty darn good. He's very good. I remember he started that game against my Vols in the Orange Bowl back in 2022. And his improvement from there has been off the charts. Again, another guy, like, that's the modern quarterback game. Like, you've got to be able to move. And I've often joked that Jared Goff is the last of a dying breed of quarterbacks. Like, you kind of got to be able to move in today's NFL. Before we go to break, just wanted to show the top 10 teams. Go and put that up right there. Top 10 teams in college football from 10 to 1. I've got South Carolina, Alabama, LSU, Oregon, Notre Dame, Georgia, Clemson, Penn State, Ohio State, and Texas, which means that I believe, I know it's officially, according to the AP, it's 1 versus 3. According to me, it's 1 versus 2. Texas, Ohio State, I think, are the best 2 teams in the country. I mean, it just doesn't get better than that as the opening game. Like, it's unbelievable. Unbelievable stuff. All right. Go to a 1-minute break, and then we'll come back, briefly do a segment on Caleb Williams, the Bears. Really liked what I saw from them in their preseason win over Buffalo. Talk about that in just 1 minute on Carving Up Live. Welcome back to Carving Up Live. So last segment before we get out of here. Listen, I haven't been as excited as I was for the second to last preseason game of week 2, Bills and Bears, as I've been for any preseason game in a while, because it did feel a little weird that, given the reports that had come out of Chicago Bears training camp, there'd been a little bit of a struggle between Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson, and Ben Johnson said it was sloppy and we would like to be further along than we were. And my take on it was, well, it's almost kind of to be expected, because Caleb plays the way he plays. He's very improvisational. That's why there were the comparisons to Mahomes. In the case of Ben Johnson, he's not used to working with a quarterback like Caleb Williams, so it will be a learning process. And I think by week 8, week 9, mid-season, I think you'll see those two kind of get on the same page, on the same wavelength. But they looked really good in the 2 drives. Again, it's preseason, so you gotta throw that disclaimer out there, because it is important to mention. But in 2 drives, we can show you what Caleb Williams did against the Bills. Touchdown, no picks, passer in 130, completed 6 of 10 of his throws. And the scoring drive, the first drive of the game, 7 plays, 92 yards, took it to the house against the Buffalo Bills defense. What I was really impressed with, it was 3 phases for Chicago. It was Caleb, it was Ben Johnson with the play calling, and it was the offensive line in Chicago. I think Greg Olsen on the broadcast on Fox mentioned something along the lines of that Caleb Williams, it wasn't the most, he didn't deal with the most pressures in the league per se last season, but it was some stat that the Bears O-line gave up a lot of pressure against Caleb, and so he was running for his life more times than not. And I think the Bears did a great job in free agency of addressing, and in the trade market, getting Joe Thuney from the Chiefs in particular, addressing that area of the ball. The Bengals could take a note from them. But you saw a lot of the old Ben Johnson Detroit Lions stuff. A lot of play action, using the tight ends. Colson Loveland was involved. Cole Kmet. Like, you got a good 1-2 punch there. You know, they use the kid Olamide Zaccheaus, who's kind of bounced around the league, but is a nice player. They've got DJ Moore. They've got Roma Dunze, who you want to kind of see take another step. Like, you saw a lot of again, it's 2 drives. Kind of got to take it not with a grain of salt, but it is preseason against a Bills team that just by and large did not play well at all. In that preseason game, Sean McDermott was very critical, and understandably so. But you just saw more of a comfort in Caleb. You saw him have time to throw. You saw that just crazy, just get the ball out of your hands, quick arm strength that you saw if you were like me and a big fan of Caleb at USC. Like, you saw that, and you're like, oh yeah, he can make those throws in the National Football League. Those are NFL throws. And Ben Johnson could be able to scheme him into those because he's one of the most gifted, most brilliant offensive coordinators and offensive play callers in the National Football League. Listen, I've said preseason predictions next week, but I've said that the NFC North is the only division in the NFL where if you told me any of the teams won the division, I wouldn't be surprised. Honest to God, you can convince me into all 4 of them. I'm not saying I'm picking the Bears to win the division. I think the fact that, because there was the fact that we talk about the Bears offense and Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson. Here's what we haven't talked about. Dennis Allen's the defensive coordinator. Dennis Allen's a terrible head coach. He's one of the best defensive coordinators in football. We've seen that in his time in New Orleans and whatnot. So the fact that that's the guy that was running Chicago's defense and Ben Johnson's calling the plays offensively, like, they've drafted well. The Colson Loveland pick was really solid. Like, Caleb's got plenty of weapons. They upgrade the offensive line. I'm not saying they're going to start the season just out the gates. Oh my gosh, Caleb's an MVP candidate. But as I said on the show last week, I think by about mid-season, you're going to start to see a little bit of the old Caleb Williams, or the Caleb Williams I thought, yeah, this is a guy that can be one of the 5 best quarterbacks in the National Football League. So there you go. I think the kid's incredibly gifted, and I love Ben Johnson. I think just offensively, they're as talented as any team in the league. Well, almost spilled my water there. And with that, that's all the time we have for today's show. Appreciate everybody stopping by as always. Again, no show on Friday. We will be back on Friday starting next week on the eve of the new college football season. Cannot wait for that. Get the Vol View, playoff predictions, the whole bit. But we'll be back on Carving Up Live on Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time, right here on YouTube, as well as any and everywhere that you get your favorite podcast. Also, a week from tonight, the Carving Up 2025 NFL kickoff show. Stay tuned for that. Definitely check it out. Give my predictions for divisions, award winners, and then who goes to and wins Super Bowl 60 in San Francisco. Cannot wait for that. Stay tuned. We'll give more information as we get it. But have a great rest of your week, guys. Can't wait to see you all again on Monday. We'll continue to put out content. Follow me on all my social media platforms. You see them down there. Instagram, TikTok, X. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, Carving It Up. Subscribe to the Grid Network. That is GRYD, the Grid Podcast Network, right here on YouTube, as well as any and everywhere that you get your favorite podcast. We'll see you guys next Monday. Stay safe out there. God bless y'all. Peace out. College football's back, baby. Can't wait. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube, and be sure to go click that big red subscribe button and check out the other clips and full shows from Carving It Up Live, as well as our other incredible content creators here on the Grid Network.